And I actually want to ask one of the speakers a question. Jeff Levin, on behalf of EBHO, East Bay Housing Organizations. Thank you. So, Jeff, EBHO wrote a letter to the council members, urging our support of the tenant protection ordinance, but the letter also strongly urged that we maintain the exemption for affordable housing developers, who manage many buildings in Oakland. So why is it that you don't want the tenant protection ordinance to apply to the affordable housing development community?
Well, first of all, I think Councilmember Cal will be able to speak to this as well. At the time that we wrote that letter, the ordinance included administrative remedies as well as civil remedies. There was not a full exemption for nonprofit-owned affordable housing. There was only an exemption from civil remedies, and the administrative remedies, the right to come to the city with a complaint, would have applied to the nonprofits, and we were in support of that. We would like to point out two things. Affordable housing owned by nonprofits has no incentive to force tenants out. They are not able to raise the rent. Their rents are restricted, and unlike private units, they can't raise their rents to market rate when a tenant leaves. Secondly, those units are monitored and inspected annually, not just by the city, but by the other funders and by their tax credit investors. And tenants have remedies, including going to those funding agencies and bringing complaints to them. Those are remedies that tenants in privately owned housing do not have. Tenants can't go to the bank that has a mortgage on a private rental unit and ask the bank to intervene, but they can come to the city, the state, HUD, or the tax credit investors, and we have seen instances in which that has happened.
Okay, but what if the proposal currently applies to relatively recent buildings that are not covered by rent control or the Just Cause ordinance. Those landlords can raise the rent anytime they want without evicting a tenant, so they don't have an incentive to get rid of a tenant either, because they can raise the rent whenever they want. So if you want to apply the ordinance to them, and you're saying, if you're not, a malicious jerk, as was described by one of the speakers, you have nothing to worry about, why not apply the civil remedy part to the affordable housing developers? I mean, I just don't see the distinction.
Because there are other remedies available to those tenants, not available to tenants in those other units. So if we really want a level playing field, are we also saying that tenants in privately owned units should be subject, or the unit should be subject to annual monitoring and annual inspection?
I think it should.
Because that is the case for the nonprofit units. So the circumstances aren't the same.
All right. Thank you for that clarification. So